Answer.
72 at O'Hare. Next news 8:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560. The Answer.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Papa Nicholas Coffee. Papa Nicholas, best beans, best roast, best coffee.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. Another violent weekend in Chicago. What was it, 4 and 43?
50 shot, 4 killed.
Uh-huh.
And but Mayor Lightfoot says we have it under control. I mean, it's not great, but things are getting better, Dan.
We're talking about decades of disinvestment on the west side and the south side. We're not going to make huge changes in a couple months over the course of a single summer.
What they did tout yesterday is that Chicago police have taken 6,000 illegal guns off the streets.
We're talking about decades of disinvestment on the west side.
I don't know if that, and that's up 20% from last year.
Uh-huh. And on the murders?
We look at a year-to-date snapshot looking at the same time period. We are down in shooting incidents. We are down in shooting victims. And the only area that we're up just slightly over 2015 is in homicides. So we're actually trending in a pretty positive direction.
Wow. Trending in a pretty positive direction. Among those, shot 8-year-old girl who was attending a family barbecue in Humboldt Park.
I mean, just stop and let that wash over you for a second. The only area where we're trending up is homicides. Hey, so things are going pretty well.
Hey, let's celebrate.
Purse snatchings are down 5%, but now we're a little bit up in homicides. It's just a remarkable statement for the transformational mayor, right?
Well, I have to
We're
tell you,
slightly up in homicides. So that's the only area we have a problem is the loss of life.
but everything like catalytic converters, those thefts are down. Auto thefts are down. Home robberies are down. But the only thing that's going up is homicides. I have to tell you, I was recently in El Paso just for vacation before this horrific shooting happened. And I was staring at those 22 crosses and thinking about those 26 people in the hospital. And I told one El Pasoan and one first responder, I said, this is a weekend in Chicago. Process that. This is what we have every weekend. I mean, maybe not 22 dead, but at least 50 plus shot. One weekend we had 83 shots.
So far, year to date, this is from heyjackass.com. Total shots, 1,716. Total homicides, 313.
Oh, my gosh.
So
we have mass shootings every weekend here.
I mean, the only area we're up is homicides. There's somebody that's concerned about every individual life, every starfish, the culture of life. We're just a little up in homicides. It's just a statistic. 313 is just a stat. So we just compare stats year over year, go back to 2015, the half year where the half pint first took office, their tiny dancer. Will compare to this half year where another half pint, Lori the Lightfoot, is in office. And we'll just compare the stats because that's all that matters is sort of the stats, how we're doing. You feel like we're doing well? Is that, you feel like you're in control? To borrow a Baneism from Batman? You feel like you're in control, Lori the Lightfoot? It's such a remarkable statement. And it just will dissipate into the ether. I mean, you want to talk about callousness, and yet I'm going to listen to Lori the Lightfoot prattle on about Donald Trump's rhetoric in relation to mass shootings? What is her rhetoric in relation to the body count in Chicago? It's just a statistic. Okay. All right. For more on the topic of gun violence, generally speaking, and what can be done about it, whether it's to combat mass shootings or to just deal with daily violence in urban centers, we're pleased to be joined by Tim Schmidt, the President and CEO of United States Concealed Carry Association. Tim, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, good morning, Dan and Amy. I'm happy to be here.
So, with respect to sort of your association's perspective of intersection with law enforcement, now how do you make the case against private gun ownership, against law-abiding citizens carrying weapons and being Johnny on the spot when Johnny on the spot is needed and police aren't there, in relation to what you're hearing from public officials at the urban center level, like Lori Lightfoot, as well as, of course, at the federal level?
Well, Dan, when you actually listen to the police officers that are actually on the street, walking the beat, you hear a completely different story. So typically when we hear on the news, we're listening to elected officials, chiefs of police, and of course, they don't want anyone to have guns, but if you go to any FOP, Fraternal Order of Police, and they're all 100% behind responsibly armed citizens, behind well-trained, law-abiding Americans who really, they carry these guns to be able to be their family's first line of defense. And sometimes they're in a situation where they're able to help others as well. So from our perspective, from the perspective of the USECA, we believe that the responsibly armed citizen is not only good for the country, but a potential powerful solution to add to the deterrent effect for these criminals.
Well, I can tell you in El Paso that the line at the gun store that I drove by was out the door. And then the local media that night, it didn't get picked up by national media, but local media said that guns were flying off the shelves, that people decided, they want to arm themselves. Are you able to conceal carry inside Walmarts in Texas?
Of course. Yep, that's 100% legal to conceal carry in Walmarts in Texas. And it's too bad that there weren't more responsibly armed citizens in that situation. But guys, I honestly don't think that we have a gun problem in this country. We have a society problem, and it's not just mental health. It's not just family value problems. It's not just politicians who really care more about being reelected than anything. It's all of these things together. And the firearm does much more good than it does bad. Of course, when a crazy person uses a gun, the media blows it up all over the place. But firearms are very effective tools to stop crimes, stop rapes, and allow us to keep our families safe.
Well, and I'm I've been following this issue for a long time, obviously, as a gun owner, until the Supreme Court interceded so that residents of states like Illinois could enjoy the same constitutional rights as residents of, say, Florida, which I believe was the first state to institute right to carry back in the late 80s. And what we find is, if you look at the data, is the incidence of concealed carry permit holders committing crimes and having their licenses revoked is infinitesimal. In point of fact, we know this to be the case just intuitively without even looking at the data, because if concealed carry permit holders were the problem in Chicago, you can bet every politician would be talking about how bad the concealed carry law is and the need to repeal it, and they need to get new Supreme Court justices and get a new case up there to repeal this as a constitutional right, because of the problems it's creating at the street level. Of course, it's not creating problems at the street level. So that should be instructive for people who are proponents of these gun-free zones and proponents of disarming the law-abiding for the benefit of the criminal.
Yeah, Dan, you're 100% right. And on top of the fact that concealed carry permit holders commit very, very, very few crimes, they actually commit fewer crimes than off-duty police officers. I mean, the facts are right there, and the bottom line is that gun laws will never work. The only thing that stops criminals and evil is the deterrent effect. And unfortunately, like you just mentioned, all these gun laws, all of these gun-free zones, they create nearly unlimited amounts of soft targets, and ultimately evil preys on this weakness. Evil preys on these soft targets, and we're just going to get more of it unless we fix this.
But in Chicago, literally, if you have a concealed carry, you can't take your gun anywhere. Not on the CTA. Nowhere.
No,
not
right.
church, schools, my gym. I always see, the sign, the gun with a red circle around it and the slash through it.
Yeah,
So,
you basically can take it in your car. That's about
That's
it.
it. Or walk down the street.
Which you could before, yeah.
And Amy, the crazy thing, that's a great point, Amy. The crazy thing is that, do you think that the criminals follow those signs? Of course they don't.
Right.
Yeah, the other thing, and then you try. Here we go again, trotting out all the things: the magazine capacity, the look of a gun, the features of a gun. As somebody texted me, regulating the size or features of your gun due to shootings is like regulating the size or features of your keyboard due to hate speech. I mean, it's totally about the instrumentality rather than the evildoer. And that just seems to be a fundamental divide in this conversation.
Yeah, well, ultimately, it gets down to what their ultimate goal is, which is to make it impossible for private citizens to own guns, and that goes against every fundamental of what this country is all about, i.e., freedom. And then that's something that at the USCCA we're just continually trying to educate people that, hey, being your family's first line of defense is what it's all about.
Is there anything that you've heard, including, say, red flag laws that are narrowly tailored, that would be a positive legal innovation with respect to public safety, sort of the intersection of the balance between individual constitutional rights and public safety?
So red flag laws, emergency risk protection orders, as are referred to, are so dangerous. So dangerous the way they're being proposed right now, because they would literally provide almost no requirement for proof that someone actually, is in trouble. We already have the legal system already makes it possible to have restraining orders and marital discourse orders that would prevent a person from having a firearm. Those already exist.